Hello and welcome back from the networking break. This is Tom Bechtold, of course, your host for today's virtual conference. Up next, we're talking about why are they after me? Understanding the motivation and techniques of threat actors in healthcare cyber attacks. And we've got a bit of ground to cover on this one. This one's very interesting to me because we did talk about, like this morning with Rebecca Harold's session, a lot about medical devices and things like that and privacy. And we're going to get into a demo of sorts with a medical device in just a little while. But I wanted to introduce my guest, Dvir Sasson. He is the Director of Security Research over at Reco, who is also one of our awesome sponsors for the event today. So welcome, sir. It's great to have you here. If you wouldn't mind, give our audience like just a little bit of a backstory, you know, where you're coming from, maybe something exciting in your career that you're proud of, and then we'll get into some questions.
Hey, Tom. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Dvir Sasson. I'm the Director of Security Research at Reco, and security was always my love, my passion in day out, even as a teenager. And I was doing some teenager stuff back in the day, back in 2004, and that ever since that I've been getting in and out of cybersecurity, and it has been always a thing that I love doing the most.
That's good. You have to have passion about this stuff, because if we're here doing this job 8 to 12 hours a day, 80 hours a week, whatever people are working, you got to have some passion behind it. So good for you,
exactly.
Man. That's great. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I want to kind of set the stage a little bit for our audience. You know, threat actors tend to not be real picky when it comes to what organizations they're targeting. And, you know, before the pandemic, they were, or actually as the pandemic started, some of them were so kind and said, you know, we're not going to pick on healthcare. And you know what? They did it anyway, because, you know, why? Thieves lie to people. That's what happens. Give you that false sense of security that, oh, you know what? You're going to be just fine. And then they're doing all this stuff, right? So that's not cool. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that stuff, what some of the psychology about this is. But they're picking on healthcare because there is a lot of, frankly, a lack of data hygiene. And I know you guys hate hearing that word hygiene when it has its, but it's true. There's legacy stuff that isn't being patched correctly. People are getting in. In some instances, I've heard of people that are well before, and they're still using stuff that's before Windows 10. I don't understand that myself. You guys are in healthcare, but I get it. There's not a lot of budget in some of these places. Some of the clinics, some of the ancillary places don't have this kind of technology. So we're going to talk about stuff. We're going to get into the threats here. And I'm going to let, Dvir, if you wouldn't mind, from your perspective, of course, why is healthcare one of the most targeted industries? If you wouldn't mind, kind of unpack that a bit for us. And I think you've got a couple of slides you're going to share with us as well. I'm going to get you that first slide. And then if you wouldn't mind, kind of enlighten me. I know the folks in the audience kind of have a glimpse of what's happening, but why are they the most targeted of industries?
Absolutely. So basically, healthcare is comprised of service providers, of manufacturing, of any sort of company that holds within not only personal identifiable information, but also health-related records. From that moment that any sort of organization holds these records, they become automatically a healthcare sort of company in the sector. It doesn't mean that they do need to provide medical services or they are fully focused on producing some medications or whatnot. It all depends on the fact that your customers, your users, your end users, for example, cannot change their own DNA. Think about it. Once a user gets started using your application, your platform, and it holds some key information about him, whether it's their medical situation, medical status, or any sort of even DNA, they are unable to control that information after they volunteer that. And these organizations, any sort of organization within healthcare, needs to hold that information to maintain it and to process it correctly. I think that's the gist of it from top to bottom. Now, when we talk about the challenges that this sector has, I think personally speaking, from my point of view, I think that's the sort of sector that is the least budget, that holds this sort of information, that is actually manufacturing these sort of medications and needs to produce 24 hours uptime and to maintain top security with some users within the organization which are not so security savvy. So the CISOs within healthcare has a lot of challenges, even more than any other sector's CISOs. And I think trying to clear out that sort of mist and to explain exactly what do threat actors and threat groups are after, this is why I'm here today. So let's break it down. From the screenshot that I have over here, this is from a site called Darkfeed that is collecting any sort of publicly announced attack on specific sectors or organizations. So the entire screenshot over here mentions the sectors that are being attacked, and there have been confirmed of attacks. We can't tell exactly how many attacks, how many unknown attacks have ever occurred from ransomware groups. These are the only ones that we're familiar of. And you can see that healthcare is at the top, even after manufacturing or any sort of business services. When we talk about threat actors or threat groups, we need to understand exactly that there are all sorts of bad people, so to speak, that are after our organization, our data. They're trying to have this motivation to get something, to perform some sort of activity. That activity could be to absolutely impact your organization. And when I say impact, is like dead in the water, not operating, unable to process or work in that sort of way. To get some sort of revenue out of your organization, that could be ransomware groups or whatnot. Act of vengeance, that could be an insider threat or any other sort of threat actor. And when we break down the threat actors or threat groups, they are the state-sponsored, which are acting on behalf of specific countries or states with a larger set of goals in mind, trying to target specific companies to either affect stock exchanges or having a bigger strategy in mind. And when we talk about e-crime, I think is the most prolific type of activity, of malicious activity in the world right now. When we talk about ransomware attacks and ransomware groups, we need to understand that it's very prolific. It requires absolutely almost zero effort from the threat actors, because at the end, we have these initial access brokers. And that's the screenshot on the bottom, on the middle bottom, which you can see that this sort of person publishes credentials or access to organizations in a dark web forum. And they're like, okay, I have these credentials. I've been checking them. They are valid. I checked where I am in the sense of these credentials, and I'm able to control that machine with these sort of privileges and permissions. Now, the ransomware groups, if you want this access to that organization without permissions, all you need to do is pay me to get that incentive or that investment. And from that moment on, you can do whatever you want with it, attack the organization from within, and take all the money with you. This sort of entire operation is also comprised of affiliates. So affiliates is not even the ransomware groups. This is like the working class of that ransomware group. It's like a small gang which gets 20%, 30% out of the final cut of that ransom, and does the entire hard work of actually trying to run the commands, as you can see on the right. The entire playbook that is mentioned over here is from a ransom group called Conti. Conti was a very prolific and large ransom group, and one of the affiliates from within that organization has decided that he had enough. They are not paying enough, and he decided to leak everything that he had on that group. That includes chats, playbooks, and whatnot. And these threat actors are working very methodically. They are performing the sort of actions in a very well-structured manner. When I say well-structured manner, is that the playbook itself contains specific commands. Okay, so you got to that machine. This is what you need to run right now to understand exactly what you're doing. if you're coming to that sort of place, this is what you need to understand to do in order to perform yada, yada, yada. When we talk about healthcare in that perspective of with the entire full challenges that they have, so we have insider threats trying to perform all these weird and wonderful things like trying to take some document or to take revenge on the boss that didn't get me my promotion. And when we talk about external threat actors, all they need is to have access to unpatched systems. All they need is for the organization to make that slightest mistake and they are in. For example, since we said that employees are not so security savvy, they might reuse their credentials. And when we say reuse, these credentials could have been leaked from other sites and they're using the same weird and wonderful password. The initial access brokers get access to that leaked sort of password, and they try to brute force or perform credential stuffing from the VPN, from the external facing email solution that you have. And it's the same all over again. Now you can say that, okay, I have MFA in my organization, it doesn't affect me. The fact that you have MFA is good, but it's not good enough. I think that once you have any sort of entry point to that organization, either from an on-prem service that is being open to the outside world, such as, like I said, a VPN or an email service, or if you have any sort of SaaS application that people use and connect from their homes, that's all they need from that point of view of trying to get that initial access to the organization and to move laterally, to try and understand exactly where they at, what can they master, what sort of information there is on that sort of platform, and do their thing. Now we know that threat actors perform these sort of attacks and initial access on the course of months, from weeks to months. They are very patient. From that moment on, when they got that impact, when they try to impact you and they steal the information and they get to the point exactly where they want it to be, that's where they start to put pressure and to extort. When I say extort, it's not just like we got publishing it out on the wide web. Okay, we attacked that company. You have 72 hours to pay us. It's more than that. We've seen double extortions and triple extortions and quadruple extortions. When I say as a professional, personally speaking, it's about some organizations being DDoSed after the attack, saying that the threat actors are saying, if you're not going to pay the ransom, we're going to continue to DDoS your full platform and infrastructure. And it goes on and on when the threat actors are actually filling an SEC report saying that, oh, on behalf of the organization, oh, listen, we were attacked and that sort of information was leaked. And the threat actors say, if you're not going to pay us the ransom, we're going to send it to the SEC. Okay, so what else I'm going to do? And you need to understand exactly that paying the ransom doesn't mean that they become all good and fun and delete everything. Since there are plenty of people with their fingers up the pot, so to speak, and plenty of people involved in this sort of process and attack, not only that paying the ransom doesn't get you anywhere, the affiliates or the initial access brokers might say, listen, I didn't get enough, a large enough cut of the pie. I want to be paid separately. If not, I'm going to leak that information anyway. So it's not like you're paying the ransom, that's it. They own your information, they own your business. And from that moment on, all you can pray is that it will never see the light of day. At the end, personally speaking, I don't believe in paying ransomware. It's about feeding the never-ending monster, and it just doesn't solve anything. I believe in assume breach, in get to that sort of point of view that the threat actors are already within that network of yours, and try to see how well can you make your systems be better secured, and to have that sort of mentality of trying to put as many obstacles as possible just to slow them down. You know, like Macaulay Culkin with that movie in Christmas, putting all these sort of traps, making the threat actors trip on one of them, and to know exactly which one made the noise and from that which system you need to close it down, shut it down, and and just start investigating. That's like on a very high level, I think. On my next slide, let me just click it. Okay, on this slide is another screenshot from Kela Threat Intelligence from 2018, but I still love it. It's about another initial access broker that is selling their credentials and access based on permissions, based on the organization, based on whichever. And again, it's the same thing. They care about trying to get access to your systems and selling it out as fast as possible for the easiest cash they can muster. And the more sophisticated threat actors, such as threat groups, Lockbit, or whatnot, they care about the entire full chain of attack because that will pay them tenfold more.
Let me pause for a second here. I keep hearing that basically the motivation is just flat out greed. I mean, is there more to it than that? I mean, because the affiliate groups, to me, coming from a sales background, they sound like resellers that are just kind of like not happy that they're not getting the profit margin that they should be. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting out of it. But is there more to it than just greed?
Absolutely. I think when we talk about threat groups in general, as I said, e-crime is purely greed. It's all about trying to make as much buck as possible, trying to maximize revenues as a whole, as a group. And when we talk about state-sponsored threat groups, as I said, they have bigger goals in mind. It's not just about money. Money is another thing that is nice to have in that sort of state of mind, but they have bigger goals. Some countries have made e-crime their main source of income, like North Korea or whatnot. But when we talk about state-sponsored in the classical sort of terminology, they have bigger goals. They are aimed to cause as much havoc as possible to make that victim country, victim state look powerless, look like they don't know how to secure their stuff. I can tell you for a fact that for the past 2 years in Israel, healthcare has been under a crazy amount of attacks day in, day out from a more complex and sophisticated threat actors. We can say that from the examples that I have over here, I have 3 examples of Israeli hospitals that were under attack. So the first one, the Hillel Yafe on the left top, it was all about trying to kill the hospital's infrastructure to make everyone go back to pen and paper. The attack wasn't so complex because there was no exfiltration of data at the end, with no personal records being stolen or any sort of medical and health information being exfiltrated. But basically, it's safe to say that the entire hospital had to be brought up using brand new infrastructure from the ground up. Almost for 6 months, the entire infrastructure was about pen and paper, which is insane when we talk about trying to administer medications to patients or maintaining information, or for the entire crew and teams to be fully working and reverting back to pen and paper is just out of this world. What's common about these 3 attacks, it was originated from Iran. And again, I think when it comes to the cyber attacks coming in and out from Israel in Iran, Iran was always focused about making the state of Israel to look much more weak when it comes to cybersecurity and to target the weakest link, I think. In the second attack, when it was, again, in the center of Israel, next to Tel Aviv, this specific hospital, Mayane Yeshua, it has a very large maternity ward. And not only that, they perform IVF treatments and they contain a lot of very, very sensitive personal information. In that sort of attack, some information was exfiltrated, that was confirmed, and a gag order was made in order to prevent any sort of information to be leaked in Israel. Not only that, the prime minister was treated in Mayane Yeshua several times. So that also had any sort of connection because of that VIP being treated or whatnot. In the third one, It was in Ziv Medical Center. It was just a few months ago. Again, another sophisticated attack that aimed to cripple the entire infrastructure of the hospital, and in that sense to steal information and to perform this sort of breaking down the infrastructure. And that attack was specifically and primarily being promoted by Iran and Hezbollah, and the threat groups themselves were actually doxed later on by the INCD, saying that, okay, we had enough of you guys of Agrius or Darkbit or whichever, and they were actually officially doxed, meaning that the people behind that threat group was shown with their faces and names. So the threat is real. The threat for healthcare is real. I can say that it's mainly coming from greed and about trying to get as many revenue as possible with ransom and whatnot. But you need to also remember that the threat actors might also coming from other state-sponsored countries and organizations.
That makes more sense now. I mean, they're adding that level of fear as well on top of it all. I mean, you mentioned it was like a large maternity ward. That's obviously going to freak people out. That's, I don't know. It's just the whole attacking healthcare to me just seems spineless. But I don't know. It just frustrates me that people can be that greedy. I mean, I hate to say it, but there's plenty of other industries you could be ripping off.
Absolutely.
I hate to point it to somebody else, but it's how do you fix this problem then? How do we? I mean, because we know budgets aren't really equal across the board in these places. How can security leadership in healthcare get their arms around this? I mean, it's obviously a serious problem. From the researcher's perspective, what do people do?
So let me put myself in the CISO's shoes. So basically, I'm under budget, I'm understaffed. I have plenty of outdated sort of end users machines that I need to connect to my organization, but not actually connect to my organization. That could be any sort of medical device in the hospital. I also provide information to my end users, which need to connect from their homes to my own systems in order to see what they're doing and to get new information about themselves. And I also need to maintain all of that business together with my corporate security and my cloud security and whatnot. I think there's no way around it. CISOs need to put more emphasis on patch management and disaster recovery, like absolutely first when it comes to what do we do when something bad happens, or where do we store our information, and what sort of safeguards and controls do I have around those sorts of systems, and making sure they're all segregated from one another. That when the threat actors are getting an access to my systems, to my organizations, that they will be confined to the least amount of systems that they can move to. In that sort of way, again, you can be as the safest organization in the world, but at the end, if you provide some end users medical devices for them, for any sort of end user to check their temperatures, like this sort of device that I have over here. I'm not going to mention the brand or name, but you can see that it has a camera over here. And that device with the camera is allowing me to take and measure my temperature and to take pictures of my throat or my ear. But what happens if, for example, me as a bad guy, instead of a picture that I'm taking, I will be scanning a QR code, and that malicious QR code gets uploaded to the cloud and affects that vendor's infrastructure. You need to think of like a never-ending game of not only a whack-a-mole, but where will the threat actors gain access from? What safeguards do I have, not only MFA, but for my users to perform their daily activities without me to affect their daily work as a security or CISO in mind. I think since that challenge keeps on growing, and the systems are never ending, and you need to maintain all these platforms together, this is where automation and relying on other sorts of vendors will allow you to and enable you to continue and do your job properly. personally speaking, I think that our solution and our platform as Reco allows us to perform this in a very good manner of trying to understand exactly where do users come from, where do they operate from, what their daily journey looks like, what sort of access do they have. And that allows us as professionals and users to see exactly if there are any sort of threat actors within that sort of SaaS platform, and to disconnect or kill the session immediately on the spot without any sort of major threat becomes a real breach in that sort of way.
So I have a question for you. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, take us through your platform. I want to see the platform and how it can actually work, because I have some questions that are around that, I believe. So if you wouldn't mind, give us a tour, and then I'll come back with a couple questions for you.
Okay, awesome. So Reco's platform allows any sort of SaaS application to be onboarded and to automatically check for permissions, for access, for users' activity, and what sort of interconnectivity does it have to other SaaS platform applications or even back to the organization. Now, since we know that the barriers are already gone, there is no real on-prem, there is no real cloud, everything is intertwined. Our platform allows any sort of user, security analyst, GRC analyst, CISO, platform owner, to understand exactly what sort of permissions and users does every user has within that platform, to see exactly the score and to understand exactly if threat actors are within that sort of platform. Since the way that we know that threat actors operate, they try to jump between different platforms, different machines to perform lateral movement from on-prem to cloud, from cloud to SaaS, back to on-prem. It's a like I said, it's a never-ending game of whack-a-mole. Our platform allows to detect and enable the CISOs to detect whether initial access was made, whether any sort of weird and irregular connection was made from a specific user or a token or a SaaS key from any place in the world, to detect it immediately as it tries to perform any sort of even a connection, a basic connection, or with MFA, without MFA, and to kill the session immediately on the initial access point. And from the moment that even if we missed anything and the threat actor is trying to perform any sort of privilege escalation or move laterally, or to see exactly what sort of ways does it have to move, or even to perform any sort of persistency, we cover that. Our aim is to detect the threat actors before it becomes a breach, and to perform any sort of detection in that very early stages of the attack in these sort of places.
Interesting. Okay, you added to my list of questions now, though. That's on you, sorry. But no, seriously,
No worries.
I want to back up a little bit to the medical devices. So many places just want to make a buck, right? We're all in business to make money, right? But they're not building security into all of these devices either. So how do you address that challenge when they just want to sell these devices so that we can get them out there in the field, but it's either not secured or they've been lazy and I can just Google search and find the admin password for the stuff? How do people fix that part of the challenge? But then I do have a bunch for your platform as well.
Okay, no worries. So when it comes to end user devices such as these, there are sort of several ways to try and tackle that. First things first, you need to understand exactly that any sort of physical device that you hand out or give to the public will be torn apart, will be attempted to be attacked, physically speaking, trying to connect to the firmware, trying to connect to the secrets being stored on the board itself. I think the first things first is interconnectivity of the physical connections that are available to the end user. Second thing is about encrypting the firmware and making sure that the firmware is harder to be decrypted from within the device, or either via from an OTA sort of update. From that moment on, you need to perform some syntax validation or any sort of upload that's being made to the cloud to see exactly what's being uploaded back, whether it's a QR code, any sort of other pictures, stuff that are with different sizes, stuff with a specific geolocation. It doesn't matter. You need to understand exactly which sort of data do you expect to get back from the end user. Once you have that sort of system that you know exactly who manages or what sort of open access do you have about it, you need to see exactly who has access to it, how can you limit that sort of access to specific IPs of your organization using VPN, without a VPN, and to take that entire thing apart one layer at a time to make sure that you won't be attacked only because you handed out these sort of devices.
Thank you for that. My next one. Let's talk about compliance for a minute. With having this stuff automated, now you're just like patching stuff. Does this help with like kind of keeping stuff like under compliance? I mean, it feels like it would, right? I mean, it kind of helps alleviate that bit of the headache, right?
Absolutely. I think that compliance is a large catalyst when it comes to securing organizations. I think when organization actually, let's take a step back. There were plenty of attacks that were happening in the last year or 2 years. Since the SEC decided that CISOs are accountable for any sort of breach or attack that they might have in the organization, I think that security professionals have become much more paranoid with regards to what will happen to the professional future if something bad will happen. I think in that sort of way of compliance and coming with and for the government to come with a bigger stake in that sort of way, saying that, listen, the organization, you need to fix up all of your systems and patch up everything, and you need to be aware that once you get attacked, you need to report us back within that sort of amount of days. That's making people move with regards to the steps that they need to take in the sense of not only accepting the risk, but actively working in order to minimize and to remediate that sort of risk. When it comes to security enabling the business, or the other way around, the business enables security, there's a fine line that some CISOs tend not to cross. Like, how can I patch my systems if it's going to cause downtime to the business for 72 hours and no one will be able to connect, and my organization will lose revenue? So it's not only trying to come up with a clear solution of, yeah, I know what to fix, I know how do I want it. It's about providing other means of the business to perform their daily operation and to generate revenue without affecting the end users and without sacrificing the security of that organization, and coming up with another sort of way to perform these activities without downtime. That's the key for winning, I think. Compliance is absolutely key. Compliance pushes us in the right direction of understanding exactly what do we need to secure, or what sort of data do I have. And I think, personally speaking, that's a plus.
For sure, for sure. My last question, as it relates to your platform, what about rules? We talk about, bad guys get in. One of the first things they like to do is set up a bunch of rules in your inbox so that you're not seeing messages, and it's just forwarding them off to them. And they're doing whatever they want with these messages now. Is there a way to kind of, like, if somebody starts creating a bunch of rules in their account, does your platform like grab that real quick? It's like, oh, we caught you. I mean, does it do some, obviously it's not gonna say we caught you, but does it like flag that somehow? I mean, is it that smart? I mean, how does it work?
Yes, since our platform is able to join and get all of these sort of events coming from different platforms all together, and since we're monitoring any onboarded platform, we're able to see exactly the user's activity once they attempted to sign in, either from the interactive sign-in of username and password, or whether API access, SaaS, secrets, tokens, whichever. And once they try to perform any sort of activity, either by setting up the means of persistency or exfiltration, or like you said, setting up new forward email rules in their mailbox, we are able to see that. And we are able to see, to mention that to the admins, to the CISOs, to who's ever in charge. Listen, you have an incident on your hands. You need to act now to solve that.
Right. Because I mean, what we learned from the Secret Service guy earlier today was that's what they're doing. They're changing the rules, and then people don't even notice it. And then, bam, they get hit with a business email compromise. Or worse, they're just kind of laying dormant until it's time to do something else. So appreciate that. Thank you. All right, we're almost out of time. But what I like to do is I always like to get your final thoughts, if you would. If nothing else, what should our folks start doing now to help better their posture, or maybe, where are some of the places that you go to for, staying in touch with the research, the facts that are out there? Because there's a lot of misinformation too. But where do you go, or give us some homework, whatever you choose.
Okay, awesome. So first things first, I think one of the key takeaways that I want the audience to take with them is to, like I said, assume breach. With that sort of mentality of always be paranoid, always think that the threat actors are already within your networks, with that sort of mindset, you need to understand exactly what sort of assets do you have, which sort of systems do you have, how your business works. Very, very basically speaking, are you providing access to end users? Are you providing access to your own corporate users? Do you have information stored in that sort of place? Which sort of acquisitions do you have in the last year? Which sort of systems were you been given as a legacy sort of technology that you need to attend to? Everything that comes to mind. Make a very long list and a very long catalog of what sort of inventory or assets do you have, starting from that. And planning that sort of review and auditing system by system, and the sort of configuration that you have, and playing the patches from that moment on will enable you to plan everything ahead. Again, DR is one of the key things that I want people to attend to, and to make sure that they have a very strong DR program of exactly understanding what to do when something bad happens. With regards to where to get announcements or bulletins. So first things first, CISA is one of the key places that I personally love to read and hear about stuff that happens globally. Also, if you are a bit more technical and if you want to know more about vulnerabilities or to set up some specific alerts if new vulnerabilities get released, it's attackerkb.com. It's a Rapid7 site, which I personally love and contribute to. Again, tons of other news sites such as the Hacker News or Darkread, and setting some even basic scanning coming from Shodan, making sure that you have an account over there, mentioning your specific ASNs or IPs or any sort of places that you use, and setting up new alerts on new ports or new services that are being spun up on your external IPs is always a bonus, I think, to know exactly if someone has created a new web server that I'm not aware of in my organization that runs on that port in that IP, and all of a sudden I get an email and I know that it actually happened. So it's always a good thing. It's always something that will keep you busy. Reading a lot and maintaining that mentality will enable you to succeed in your role and to secure your business and organization from the bad guys that we talked about earlier.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. If we didn't get to all of your questions out there, definitely pop by the Reco booth. They've got some folks over there. They've got some really cool resources over there too. And I did want to point out, Reco is actually offering a free risk assessment for their SaaS security platform, which we just heard it makes healthcare organizations a bit easier to protect their data across different SaaS platforms. They're offering this assessment for folks that are using Salesforce, Microsoft, and Viva, if I'm not mistaken. So pop over there and see how their advanced security tooling can protect your PHI across your SaaS ecosystems. But seriously, go over there. They have answers that are going to help you. Get over there. They're talking about fixing legacy software issues, which I think is probably one of the worst entry points we can make an excuse for. I'm still using an old DOS program. Come on, it's 2024, people. You don't need stuff from the 90s anymore. It's time to upgrade, please. Anyway, that's my opinion. You don't have to listen to me on that, but definitely listen to Dvir Sasson. He is the director of security research over at Reco. Knows a heck of a lot more than I do about this stuff. So I appreciate your time, sir. This concludes our time together, but like I said, pop over to the booth. They've got some more resources over there for you to enjoy, and we've got a break coming up, and then more sessions on the way. So just a reminder for everybody out there in the audience, we'll get that CPE credit email out usually about an hour after the sessions close today, so after the Colonel Layton one, about an hour later, we'll have that one. And then also, this all repeats afterwards. So feel free, you can come back over the weekend, whenever, for the next 90 days. All of these sessions will be available for you to attend. If you heard something that you liked today, share this stuff. This whole conference is free. Please share this with colleagues. If you've heard me once, you've heard me say probably 100 times, collaboration really is the only silver bullet we have right now in cybersecurity. So please, collaborate with your peers, share this information. It's good stuff. And I'm tired of seeing all of our friends get hit in the news as the next breach candidate. So that concludes this session and my opinions. We'll see you guys in the networking lounge in the next round of sessions. So be well and take care.